Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. This is the NAD C388 Integrated Amplifier. I'm going to give you a little review of it and also show you the menu and the remote. So this is the remote. Let's try to get a nice focus on that camera. I think that the remote overall is excellent, except for this blue light. See this blue light? In the dark, this blue light is it's like hitting you in the eyes. So I think that if this is a receiver, amplifier, integrated amplifier, whatever, if I call it receiver through the whole thing, it is what it is. I think that this blue light can be really, really annoying, because let me see if I could get it to hit off my glasses. You can see it, I think, off my glasses now. The light can be annoying because it keeps like hitting you right in the eyes, okay? Even if you're not looking at it and you're like this, it's still hitting you right in the eyes. So I would definitely consider putting like a piece of tape over it or something like that to cover it up. I'm not sure the thinking with that light. You know, when they were making this remote, because the remote has really nice buttons, it's really well spaced out. Right over here is your A and B speaker, so you just go like this. You hit A, and then you hit A again. Turns it on, turns it off. Same thing with B. Turns it on, turns it off. Maybe I'll do a little zoom in. Okay, maybe that's a little better. So yeah, so then if you want to do A and B, you'll have to turn on A, come over here, turn on B. Now A and B is on. You could flip off B, turn off A. So let's see, how do I, okay, so now I'm up in the menu, because there's like two, oops. Now over here on the remote, there's a button for your tone controls, so you could turn it on and off. Now when it's on, you just press down on the remote, and now you could adjust your bass. If you press down again, you could adjust your treble and the balance, left and right. Full range, or you can you could turn on a high pass filter, see? Or you could do full range. So let me go back here. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. You could hit a button to turn the tone controls on and off. I really do appreciate the A and B buttons on the remote, how they're nice and spaced, because it's great if you want to listen to two sets of speakers. For example, having a set in the rear and having a set in the front, and you want to have like all channel stereo and maybe just like lay back on the couch and listen to, you know, 4 speakers at once. You could hit them very easily, you know, on the remote. Okay, so let's go back to the, let's see, go to menu. Okay, so up top, when you push up on the remote, you could see, or maybe you can't see it, it puts like a white box around it. So let's go to settings. So tone controls are off. We press down, we got balance, full range, keep pressing down. The pre-out for the subwoofer, speaker A, the temporary display is off. The dimmer is set to normal. Maybe I should make it bright for this. Now it's on bright. Network standby, have it off. You could turn it on. This only can access Bluetooth. Okay, so there's an antenna back here, which I'm going to show you the back. There's a little antenna, but it's only for Bluetooth. Okay. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I'm a little bit disappointed. It would have been nice for it to have Wi-Fi. Let's see, Autosense, auto standby on or off. Autosense on off. Autosense, I'm trying to remember. I believe that is to sense a signal, and it'll turn itself on and off. IR channel, you have these different channels for the remote, I believe. IR learning device, yeah, amp. Okay, sync and source. Okay, so it has to be on sync versus source. I forgot exactly why. It has a pretty big manual, and I did read through probably most of it. I mean, some of it I skimmed over, so I was kind of just looking for things as I was skimming through it. But so BT work mode sync, okay, it has to be set to sync if you want to send from your tablet or your phone streaming music with Bluetooth, okay? If you have it set to source, then somehow I believe this is going to be sending things to other devices. I could be wrong, because to be honest, I forgot, but I did read it. So the Bluetooth work mode, BT work mode, sync, source, and off. Again, I had it to sync because that's what enabled me to stream to it. Volume display mode, this is the percentage, decibels or percent. I have it set to percent. The firmware version, this requires manual updates with a USB drive, so you have to purchase a USB drive. And it's a little bit tricky because there's like 3 different firmwares that you have to update. And what you have to do is you have to turn off the power switch and then put the USB thumb drive in. And when you put the file on the USB thumb drive, make sure it's only the file for one firmware, not the 3 that are sitting over here. It has to be only one on that thumb drive. It has to be formatted. I think it was FAT32, but I did it quite a few weeks ago, so I forgot. But just follow the instructions, and then you put that firmware on it. So don't put 2 different firmwares, because what you do is you take the switch and turn it off, and then when you turn off the switch and turn it back on, it's going to automatically see the firmware and start the update. Oh geez, I just lost the, where is it? Go back, settings, tone controls, where were we? We're back at the firmware. Okay, firmware, serial number. Okay, so this is one upgrade, VFD upgrade, and then when you press right, there's the BT upgrade. So these are 2 of the 3, okay? So what you'll do is you'll press the enter on this, and then it'll do the update. But first you gotta upload it, and I know that this isn't making any sense, but just follow those instructions, and you know, it'll make sense. MDC card upgrade, slot 2. Okay, I put a upgrade card in here with HDMI. The HDMI, while it's on the top of my head right now, it has sync issues with videos with the voices. I mean the voices when watching movies, and the lips. So like the mouths were moving. So it was kind of like watching like a dubbed movie. So I don't think that it's good for that. And I think that the HDMI is really only good if you want to hook up some type of like a music streamer to it, because I don't think that the video works very well. It does not give you any type of on-screen display, even with that very expensive HDMI add-on, which I think was like $360. So really the only good that I see, you know, from that add-on is you know, for music streaming. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, gotta go back down. Tone controls, where was I? I think I was at the update. Yeah, okay, so the upgrades. Yep, so that's pretty much it. That's, you know, the menu. And you could also control it from here, and you could use this to move it around as well, okay? So here's the volume. Again, I set it to percentage. And I find that most of the music that I was listening to was somewhere probably starting around 40 or so. I mean, volume probably around 35 is when it starts to get going. But most of the volume was probably in the low 40s, and then to probably around 55. I noticed that with some speakers, I could probably take this to about 63%. 65, I think we're starting to push it. I don't think that the sound was very clean. But, you know, I remember, you know, hundreds of years ago when I was reading things in audio magazines, you know, as a kid, I remember like the general rule was, it was something like 63% is something that, you know, you don't want to go over, because that's when it starts to distort. But I did notice over here that roughly, you know, when you get around 60, you know, maybe you could get to 65. But I think that that's pretty much it as far as, you know, it's sounding clean. So you'll probably be in the 40s to 50s listening to, you know, most of your music with this. It does have a headphone jack in the front. I have headphones. I didn't test it out because I don't really use headphones. I have them, but I don't really use it. So, you know, that for me, that wasn't important. So I'm going to flip this around, and then I'm going to show you the back. Okay, so I'm going to turn it around. If you get a look at it, actually, I'm going to turn it off. And that's pretty much it. You know, it's plain black. I don't find anything about it to be attractive, to be honest. So here's the rear, and this is the HDMI card that I added into it. So it doesn't come with it. It comes with actually this plate is on. Okay, so that's what you'll see. So you'll see the plate. Now here's that antenna. This is the Bluetooth antenna. You know, that's really all it's good for. And then you have over here, you have your optical. You have two optical inputs. And then there's a whole bunch of the RCA ins. Here's the coaxial digital. So you got opticals, coaxial. You have your RCA inputs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got your phono. This is called line 1. This is called line 2. And this is your pre-out to your subwoofer, okay, or to something else. So of course it's a left and right preamp output. Trigger. This is the 12-volt trigger, which if you want to hook this up to, say, a home theater receiver, right, and you want your home theater receiver to turn this on and off, well, it will. You just have to connect the cable. And then this is the output, so if you wanted to send this to like another amplifier to also turn on another amplifier, there's your output. Let's see, what else? Here, underneath the antenna, this is the USB where the thumb drive will go. Let's see, what else? And of course, these are your speakers, your A set, and here's your B set. And I think that that's pretty much it. I think I covered it all. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over my notes about the NAD C388 Integrated amplifier. This amplifier with the Definitive Tech towers sounds really, really good. There are other speakers that I did not like the sound when they were hooked up to this, but with the Definitive towers, in particular, the old Definitive towers, the 7006 that I have, they seem to be a really good match, okay? And this amplifier is a Class D amp, and you know, maybe that's part of the reason why they're such a good match, but the sound stage was just so spacious and like a lot of depth to it. With some of the other speakers, I didn't feel that way, but there were some that I thought were great, some not so much. Sometimes when I was listening to things, it was just bouncing around the room. It was really fantastic. The overall clarity on this is good. I feel like this amp is probably somewhere kind of neutral bright. Okay, but then there was times when I hooked this up to some speakers and I thought maybe it was kind of warm sounding. So I think overall, I think it's more neutral to bright. And one of the reasons why I say that is because I have over here to the right of me, these speakers over here I hooked up to it, which is the Polk Monitor the Monitor 42. I've always found these to be a very, very bright, forward, sharp sounding speaker. And with the NAD hooked up to it, it didn't calm these down in any way. This speaker still sounded very sharp when it was hooked up to the NAD, and also the definitive towers sounded a bit more clear. So I felt like the NAD was kind of more on the cool side of amplification, or more on the bright side of amplification. So it's maybe neutral to bright. But I'm thinking a little bit more bright just because of how it kind of changed the sound of these speakers. I think that pairing it with warmer sounding speakers, or neutral warm sounding speakers, is probably a better idea than pairing it with speakers that are very bright sounding. I think that the amp is the best kind of in the upper mid-range. The cymbals, when the cymbals are hit, for example, with these definitive towers, the cymbals were hit. So like the cymbals hit, and it's like the amp pulls back. So it's not like the cymbals hit, and then the amplifier is just continuing the shimmering, sizzling sound, kind of endlessly. I feel like this amplifier is very good at pulling back on the cymbals, so it makes the cymbals sound tight, which is kind of how they should. I've done speaker reviews where, I feel like some speakers would take the sound and the shimmering, sizzling just like never ends. With this amplifier hooked up to these definitive towers, I've never heard these definitive towers sound this good. It's the best I've ever heard them sound. I was actually blown away by it. But there are some other speakers that didn't sound so good on it. So, it's one of those things. It's a mix and match. I think that the golden ears are the Aeon 3s. With this, I think that it sounds good with them. It's very detailed, at least with like acoustic music, acoustic guitars. It's almost like you could hear the strings being picked in the air. So, I thought that the golden ears sounded good with this. But for example, the Dyne Audio Emit, M20 model, I didn't like it at all with this. I thought it sounded pretty bad. The same way I don't like the sound of the Polk Monitor 42s. Oh, I hate all these number codes for names. I didn't like the sound of this at all with the NAD either. For something like this, like this Polk needs a very, very warm sounding amp. But this isn't a good speaker, but I think that you get the idea. I found that with this amplifier, using these definitive technology towers, that I'm turning up the volume to increase the mid-range and the treble, which is very different than most speakers where the volume is being increased in order to compensate for bass. You typically have to turn up the volume in order to get a nice balance out of a speaker. You need that extra wattage to produce the bass. Now this speaker does have its own amplifier in there. The NAD, I was turning it up in order to bring out the upper end, the upper range, or the mid-range and the treble. So it actually sounded kind of nice. With the golden ears, I found that it worked pretty well on the lower mid-range spectrum in order to sound clear. This amp, has to match to the right speaker. That's really the point. There was quite a bit of music that I was listening to where I never really noticed a little bit of, say, the echo or the reverb in the singer's voice until listening to it on this amplifier. Okay, so this amplifier really, it can it can bring out the details in music with the right speakers. Some of the music that I listened to, it really sounded good. Like the vocals, I was like, wow, like really, really clear, nice sounding vocals. And I could almost hear a little bit of like the reverb or a little bit of echo that's in that recording that, you know, I couldn't hear with other amplifiers with these speakers. So I did mention already that, you know, the volume up in the mid 60s is probably, you know, the max that you'd want to go. Now back to the volume. The volume for acoustic music, 63%, maybe 65%. That would be the high range, okay? Volume for hard rock, probably 55, maybe pushing it to 57. But I found, you know, in general, when it starts getting over that percentage, then it might not be as clean. So again, music that's very acoustic, very calm music, you could probably take the volume up into the, you know, into the 60s. But of course, it's also going to depend on the speaker, you know, the speaker's sensitivity. A few examples of some songs that I really enjoyed with this was the Alice in Chains from the MTV Unplugged album. If you haven't listened to it and you're into, you know, you're into rock music or grunge or whatever you like, the Alice in Chains Unplugged is the best of the best as far as a recording goes. I actually have it on the DVD somewhere, which actually has a 5.1 mix. The 2-channel version though, the 2-channel audio, the guitars just shine on the NAD. I mean, it sounds so clear and so crisp with these definitive speakers. Just sounds fantastic. Also sounded really good using the Golden Ears, the Aeon 3s. Huey Lewis and the News, the Greatest Hits album, just sounded really spacious and detailed. I was really appreciating this amp listening to old classic Huey Lewis. The band of Mice and Men, there's a song called Another You. Something I should point out about this amplifier is that it handles music that has like a sound fluttering. That's the only way I could explain it. The only way I could explain it is when like the sound is going back and forth quick between the speakers. Like it's like bang, 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 bang. Okay? So like it's fluttering back and forth. So sometimes that's like with vocals, sometimes that's with the instruments going back and forth, stop and start type of music. This amplifier handles it really well. So the band of Mice and Men has a song called Another You. And when you listen to it, sometimes there's a little bit of that fluttering type of sound that happens in it. And it just really sounded great. I mean, just fantastic. Another song of Mice and Men is called The Game of War. And The Game of War it's a pretty easy laid back type of song, especially for this band. The vocals and the snare drums, just so clear, just fantastic. I mean, you know, you have to listen to it. It's very hard to explain, you know, the things that I'm mentioning. If you own this amp or if you do purchase it, and you happen to own a pair of definitive speakers or something of that caliber, and you're listening to the music, you know, I think that you'll see what I'm saying. The band 32 Leaves, the song called All Is Numb. The whole song, just I was wowed by it because I don't think I've ever heard the song sound so clear and so detailed. This amp really handles details and bringing them out very well. It, you know, it really does a good job. The band Seether, the song is called Rise Above This. Very spacious and very detailed sound. Listening to it on this NAD amp. If this amplifier itself with the volume knob and all this other junk isn't something that you need, but maybe, you know, you're in the market for an amp, they do make amps where the specifications are pretty close to it, and it's a lot cheaper. So, you know, you might want to just pick up the amp itself. Here's a song from Pantera. It's called War Nerve. The drums, I don't think I've ever heard all the drums so clearly as I have on this NAD. The drums were heard and they just sounded tight. Pantera, you know, being an older band, but, you know, in my opinion, a lot of those recordings weren't so good. And a lot of the remasters, maybe it's just me, but I think that a lot of those remasters sound terrible. So that's about it for this review. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I do hope that it helped at least somewhat. I know it was probably very long, but I did want to cover a lot of topics and kind of give you, you know, a good overall as to, you know, how I feel about this NAD C388. I do realize that a Class D amp is not for everybody, but for a Class D amp, it actually sounds pretty good. I can't say that it sounds as good as a good, you know, Class, you know, AB amp. I think that it does the best that it can for a Class D, and, you know, a Class D is also going to be a lot more efficient on power, so you're probably going to save some good money on the electric bill with something that's a Class D versus a Class AB, and a lot of those ABs can be like a portable space heater. So, you know, that's just something to consider.